What we're going to do today is spend a couple of minutes preparing chicken for our breaded chicken sandwiches. We love our Popeyes, we like our Chick-fil-A. We're going to go with a couple of different styles when we get to that phase of the preparation. You can brine chicken in a variety of things. A lot of people like to do buttermilk. The acid helps break it down. I prefer to use a salt brine. It tends to help the meat stay moister, obviously give it a little bit of flavor. What I prepared for us today is 1 quart of cold water. It contains 1 tablespoon of kosher salt and 1 tablespoon of brown sugar, which, as you can see, gives it that attractive, very pale tea color. It could be confused for something else, which it's not. This is our brine, and it's for our chicken. So, for a chicken sandwich, you want flat chicken that's going to give you coverage for the bun. But you can see the chicken doesn't cooperate. It gives us a piece that runs from one end to the other with a taper going the entire length of it. So we're going to alleviate some of that by cutting, and we're going to alleviate some of that by pressing. First step is to cut. One thing you'll notice that I do, I just wash my hands. Chicken is a fairly risky contaminant. It's not going to threaten the world with disease, but you do need to be very conscious of cross-contamination when you're dealing with chicken. So I'm going to almost entirely have my left hand handle the actual meat, right hand will handle this tool and some other ones as we get to that process. So, because we get the taper, we need to keep the bulk of it up there, and the first thing we're going to do for our cut is to go from about 1/3 at an angle, creating another taper, and we end up with a piece that's already pretty flat. That one's not going to need a lot of work. This one is, and there's a couple of different ways we can go. We'll use a couple of different techniques today as we prepare this. On this first one, we're actually going to butterfly it, and we're going to cut into this thick section and then open it up. If we take just another little cut or so, you can see now we've got it to lay pretty flat, and it's pretty even across. So you can do most of it with a knife. We're probably still going to pound these a little bit. And this one, you could argue this one could have been trimmed up a little better. Obviously these are boneless and skinless. That's the way they came from the grocery. That doesn't bother me, that extra little fatty piece there. When your cooking process, that's just going to be more flavor. Fat and oil is flavor. So again, about 1/3, maybe 1/4 from the bump there. We cut this, that gives us a decent piece. We can take this piece, butterfly it, and we've got a good starting point. We're going to keep repeating this process. I'm using a lighter bladed chef's knife. I have, if you've seen the knife tour, I have a variety of different chef's knives to choose from. Each of them have their strengths and weaknesses. This one is a Japanese style steel and very good at lending itself to these kinds of cuts. As always, we use a pinch grip for how we hold our knives. Helps immensely for safety and blade control. And while it looks like we keep our hands on the edge of the knife all the time, it's never on the edge. It's only close to the knife when we're using it. The edge is the dangerous part. Okay, so I've got 8 relatively even, relatively flat. That one's going to bug me. It has to go. Relatively flat pieces of chicken that we can use to make sandwiches where you'll know there is chicken in that sandwich. So your first choice for the next step of flattening them is just to use your knife blade, right? And just kind of squish them a little bit. And that works pretty well. That helps actually kind of smooth out. Now notice I'm not running the sharp edge. I'm using the back edge. And yeah, it accumulates a little. If I use the sharp edge, it would just cut it again. So anyway, you can end up with a nice, flat, even dimensioned piece of chicken. So we'll do another one of those. This one's one of the butterflied ones. And that's the beauty of white meat chicken. even though most of the time we tend to prefer in our house dark meat, the white meat lends itself well to being rearranged in various forms by how you deal with it. Okay? So again, nice and flat. Ideally, you want to start out with meat that is larger than the bun you want to cover, because all meat shrinks up during cooking. Yeah, see how that one just flattened right out. So we make it bigger than our bun, which we're going to be using 3.5 to 4 inch buns for this, and when it shrinks down, you're still going to get the coverage of the bun that you want. So that's the first way to be able to do this. I'm going to pause for a minute, wash my hands, and get us some plastic film, and we're going to pound some chicken back. This is a meat hammer. This is a small one, it's a cute little guy. Like all meat hammers, it's got a deep prong side. That's for tenderizing quite a bit. Now, this is white meat chicken. It doesn't really need much tenderizing. We'll be using this side, which will still put some marks on it, and we'll poke through our film. You also have the option of just using the flat. So it does actually give you 3 sides. We'll start with the short points and probably do a little bit of flat pounding to finish. So you take your chicken breast, put a piece of film on it. We're trying to protect the hammer. We also don't want it to gouge that deep, but we can clean it. That's not a big deal. And you just kind of gently tap it. This is not swinging a 16-ounce hammer trying to drop some large nails into a 2x4. This is a very gentle process. The chicken, as we expressed, it's already tender, so we don't have to beat it up too much. We're trying to get a little bit better coverage and an even flat consistency, which we're there for that one. So now that one's ready to go in the brine. Not the most exciting thing to watch, but it does the job. And again, we end up with a nice, we're not trying to pound it too thin. We're not making schnitzel, but we want it, you know, somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 inch from end to end in the surfaces. So, what do you do if you don't have a little hammer? You could always sing the song, If I Had a Hammer. But if you don't have a hammer, a little pot can do the job. Flat surface on the bottom. You got to use a little bit different amount of force on it, but you can see, there we go, same result. Nice flat piece of chicken, meets the characteristics that we're looking for our chicken sandwich. Part of the reason we flatten it is so that it does cover the bun and it does cook in the sandwich, or it is good in the sandwich, but the cooking aspect of having it thinner helps quite a bit. It'll cook much quicker and more evenly. So there we go. And one more to do. I have a spare piece of plastic over there just in case we're not going to need it. So we use that for the next step of what we're doing. There we go. That's a nice bun covering piece of chicken. So, what we want to do now, I'm going to drain off just a little bit of this brine because I got a little extra from what we're going to do on the next step. The idea is we want to keep it submerged while it brines. I'll step in here, get these mitts a little bit cleaner. And this piece of film is just about big enough, it'll work. So what we're going to do is put the film on it. I happen to know that this bowl fits particularly well. With a pie pan. sitting right on top of it. Again, I squeezed out just a little bit of water, which is actually what I want. This is going to keep the chicken down under the surface of the water. We don't have to worry about any of it coming up or drying and exposing itself to the air and getting dried out. This way it will all receive the brine. We're going to leave it in there for 6 to 8 hours. So there we go. Cutting, pounding, brining chicken, ready for a fancy chicken sandwich. Using the Japanese style blade, lighter weight 8-inch chef's blade.